monsters.
Ah, Halloween. A time where shivers go down your spine. There's a chill in the air, and it's a time for you to bust out some of your favorite horror-themed media for a scare or two. Whether it be the classic books of H.P. Lovecraft, dusting off a classic monster movie film, or in the case of this video, playing horror games. Video games have the edge due to their interactive nature. Instead of watching a character face the terrors of monsters and ghouls, you're the one in the driver's seat. You're the one who has to face the monstrosity coming after you. Do you run, or do you fight? Will you live, or will you die? That all depends on you. So this Halloween we'll be covering the top 10 video game monsters, the scariest of all time. I'm your host, MangaKamen, and welcome to my list. Only rule to this video is that the monsters must be from video games, and of course, must be scary in some capacity. Yeah, whatever. If you want to give me your own top 10 video game monsters, be sure to put them in the comments below. Now, let's begin.
Oh, wow, Common. Not even the first entry and you're already breaking the only rule you have. Ah!
Yes, I know, I'm technically bending my only rule on this list, but hey, that's why that's on the lowest it can get, because I couldn't talk about a monster without talking about the iconic xenomorph from Alien Isolation. Plus, hey, it's still from a video game, and I never said that the monster had to originate from the game itself. Pretty much everyone who knows anything about Ridley Scott's Alien franchise knows all about this gem of a creature. Their memorable design, the way it instills terror into your very soul whenever you see that little critter blip on your radar. For years, fans of the Alien franchise begged for a game that captured that feeling of the movies, the suspense, and let's face it, when it comes to video games based off horror movie franchises.
Collins, you okay? What the hell is he doing? Is he river dancing?
Not to mention, you can't defeat this thing. Yes, you can scare it off with a flamethrower, but it'll be back. And who doesn't remember this scene from the game? Also, if you're familiar with games like Outlast, you probably think you can hide yourself in a locker from the beastie and be safe, right? This thing can hear you breathe. You're forced to hold your breath, attempting to save yourself. Not helping is a number of ways this thing can kill you, and from the first-person perspective, it just makes the creature all the creepier. Still, I feel as though I'm cheating, so it's number 10. The xenomorph is still really scary enough to warrant itself a place on my list. After all, in space, no one can hear you scream. Now watch me ruin this whole entire thing. I know, I get it. I screwed up the name. I'm human. I make mistakes. Sorry. But yes, Photoshop Flowey is number 9 on this list. Let's just face it, this amalgamation that would make Shao Tucker blush comes completely out of nowhere in Undertale. I remember my first time playing this, and geez, this freaked me out. Just looking at Flowey here is creepy, and not helped by the fact that it's a mixture of real-life organisms and machine parts on an otherwise cartoony and simple-styled game. And I know it's not a part of the actual game, but you should see some of the fan animations of Photoshop Flowey, and that just adds the horror factor to this. also he attacks with flies. And isn't that always charming? So this next one doesn't come from a horror game, per se, but it is a game that has a lot of horror elements to it. Metroid Fusion. This is a game that a lot of countdown makers have talked about due to the atmosphere and design choices, and players with the idea of being in a space station filled to the brim with alien life forms, all wanting to kill you. And most of these life forms can take the shape of other living creatures too, so we've essentially got a combination of the Thing and aliens going on here.
Excellent!
But really, one of the better monsters, and honestly well built up boss fights, comes when you're about to leave Sector 5, where you catch glimpses of a mysterious silhouette in the background, to the point where the screen will shake as well. It isn't until later in the game that you are informed that there's been a mysterious explosion in Sector 5, and you're forced to investigate. When you do, you find the normally Arctic sector to be completely in ruins.
Oh, jeez. I'm not paying for that.
What could have done this? Well... This is Nightmare. Now, at first look, it seems like you're fighting an elaborate mechanical monstrosity, but as you continue to fight and damage the creature, parts of its mechanical body fly off, and it starts to bleed.
Bleed green. Last time I checked, us robots don't bleed.
You know, probably one of the most overrated games in all history, at least according to hipster wannabe gamers.
As opposed to making you wait before upsetting you, I thought I'd just do it.
Is Ocarina of Time. I disagree that it's overrated. It was one of the first N64 games I ever owned. Of course, my first was Super Mario 64, and that had a lot of memories too.
Huh, I wonder why that's not on the list.
Ocarina of Time certainly does have its fair share of creepy creatures. Even in the first dungeon of the Great Deco Tree was Goma. Oh, little spiders spitting out your young. Oh.
More spiders!
Yay! But thankfully, the creature that made the list isn't a creepy spider. It's much worse.
Wait, being worse is a bad thing.
Wait a minute. What? What's that?
This is Deadhand, a very nasty creature you find in the bottom of Kakariko Village as well, and in the Shadow Temple. What we're looking at here is something that looks like a bloated zombie, with its flabby body covered in bloody red splotches, little tiny arms, and has a jaw that has a good impression of a snake. This thing is just plain creepy, and it was something I wasn't expecting to fight when I was a little kid. The fight with Deadhand can also be really scary as well, as this thing has arms ending with hands that pop out of the ground and will grab you if you get too close.
Oh, this is the worst kind of hand-holding in gaming!
Alright, so we've talked about a lot of creepy and scary monsters, but I think I need to change it up a bit. Let's talk about a very interesting design for a monster. So, the Persona series! Wow! Honestly, it's a very popular game franchise, and with Persona 5 coming out earlier this year, it certainly has cemented itself as gaining a legend in gaming. What with its great music, interesting characters, and deep storylines, this series rarely ever disappoints. Or at the very least, the games are not what you can consider bad. But let's look towards the enemies of the games. It certainly does have its fair share of freaky monsters. There's Pandora from the first game. There's Mara. And even some of the shadow bosses can be rather freaky.
What? I dealt all that exquisite pain and you're still not satisfied? What a finicky guest! You might as well die then! Ah!
But rather, the monster I want to focus on is the Reaper. This optional boss first appeared in Persona 3, and has appeared in every Persona game since then, and I can say that I just love the take on this Grim Reaper. I mean, instead of a scythe, we've got ourselves a gun-toting monster who can make the Joker self-conscious. But the rest of the design is classy. Long black cloak, and to make things all the more interesting, its face is covered up in a blood-soaked sack, with just a single eye poking out, revealing some ripped flesh around it. And at this point, you can see the chains around its body. Well, that's what added to this monster's charm. Before this monster appears before you in the games, you can hear the ominous chains a-rattling. And then it appears, sometimes chasing you, sometimes in a chest. But should you come across this vile creature of death, you better be ready for a fight, because this thing is out for blood, and it's not afraid of spilling yours. Only real men fight the Reaper in a bath towel.
Hello, ladies.
If there's one thing I've noticed when it comes to horror, I tend to favor more of the surreal and paranormal. Something akin to the uncanny valley is always freaky. This is just freaky as all hell. There's just something about body parts and faces being in places that they just don't belong that just sends a chill up my spine. This is from the game series Siren, more specifically Forbidden Siren 2, from the same creators who made Silent Hill, so there's gotta be some creepy imagery in this. Obviously. And frankly, when you're dealing with a game that is full of the creepiest facial capture technology that I've ever seen in gaming, and it's cheap as well, but it's got that charm that'll haunt your nightmares just by looking at the characters who aren't monsters.
Ah, that's it. It was on TV. So, are you gonna turn this into a book?
It'll also make you cringe at the voice acting. But this isn't a review. What we're talking about is the monsters of the game, or in particular, the Yamibito.
Come out!
Essentially, they're monstrous humans who have these grotesque figures to them, and sometimes they'll have some of the most messed up bodies. Ugh! Why chicken feet? Siren and Forbidden Siren 2 are good horror games, but these are games that you'll want to play just for the sake of seeing these freaky monsters. Or if not that, then this awesome scene. Okay, so I'm a fan of the Ao Oni game. Before I go on, that movie sucked! But the games? pretty good. I'm serious, for such a simple game, Ao Oni has some good gameplay for a small freeware game. It's not too difficult, but it's also has its fair share of scared. And what's really interesting about this RPG Maker series is that there's a ton of fan games for it, but not as many as something like Yume Nikki. But there's still quite a large amount of them, and one of them is Nira Oni. The setting for this game is that you're trapped in a hospital with your friends, and a ton of monsters. So you need to be able to outrun these monsters in order to survive. Most of the monsters you come across are something akin to like a humanoid Oni with various scars and sewed-up stitches, roaches with eyes in the back of their bodies, an Oni with bad posture, hey buddies! But what is the most disturbing monster is this one. This thing comes out of nowhere! And look at this thing! It's like something that came out of the Thing's book of all those limbs and eyes over its mountain of a body. Now you may be wondering, why isn't it higher on the list? Well, it has a very prominent weakness. A bench! I have no words for this. It wouldn't be a scary monster list if we didn't have something from the Silent Hill series. Hell, it's probably one of the most iconic series for horror games in the last 3 decades of gaming. But which monster is it? Silent Hill 2's Pyramid Head? Nah, that's too cliched. Don't misunderstand though, I will give credit that Pyramid Head certainly is iconic, but what I consider scarier are the new ghosts from Silent Hill 4. Silent Hill 4 is often regarded as the weakest of the original 4 Silent Hill games. I tend to disagree since I really think it's a strong game in its own right, and in part for that is the fact that the most creepiest monsters in the game series, the ghosts. So in the game, there are numerous enemies that are tormented souls. They all possess the ability to peer out of walls with blood splattering from their entrance, and these things, they can't be killed. No matter what you do, they will continue to chase after you, with their moans of pain and suffering following you throughout the halls of the other world. The only way to stop them is to use an item called the Sword of Obedience. And there's only 5 of them in the entire game, so you need to decide which of these 10 ghosts you want to pin down. However, I want to focus on the new type of ghosts. Why, you may ask? Because you get to see how they became tormented souls. You see these once normal people suffer and become these horrid creatures who are only hell-bent on killing you and dragging you down into the grave. It's just creepy to see what these monsters were before they faced tragedy. That and the fact one of them's on fire when he's chasing you! So yes, I decided to combine the second and first place for this list, and for 2 good reasons. 1, both of these monsters come from the same franchise, and 2, they both are on the list for different reasons, so there is still a place setting, but I felt it'd be only natural to talk about them both at the same section. So number 2 is Nemesis. Resident Evil 3 Nemesis. I love Nemesis.
My darling, I can't get enough of your love.
No,
No, not in that way! I love how he's programmed. He will chase the player through various areas. Hell, even if you go into a safe room, well, he won't enter that room. He'll be waiting outside of it, just waiting for you to poke your head out. You face Nemesis a total of 11 times, and you can run away from 8 of those times, but he will chase you. He will find you.
I will kill you.
Really, Nemesis was a precursor to the Xenomorph from Alien Isolation. You can shoot him and down him, but he'll come right back after you. The only downside is that his design isn't all that scary to me. Yes, it is scary. Heck, it's got those elements that I've highlighted throughout this entire list that creep me out. The exaggeration of features, the hideous incisions that are sewed up haphazardly, and he's got that sick coat. But really, in comparison to my number 1, Nemesis doesn't really hold a candle. And if you've noticed, there's a bit of a trend with my whole video thus far. You notice that a number of my entries deal with the more human-like creatures, or have human features that were distorted or messed with. Mine, number 1, holds a lot of elements of what I've covered. I see what you did there! William Birkin. Out of all the scariest monsters I've seen in video games, none was scarier than William Birkin. Originally a scientist working on the G-Virus, Birkin was gunned down by the Umbrella Corporation's security service. However, in his last moments, Birkin was able to inject himself with the G-Virus and became known as G. I'm still gonna call him Birkin since that's still technically William Birkin. When you first encounter him in the gameplay, he looks like a gravely wounded, muscular man, almost as if he's on his last moments of his life. But then... every time you encounter Birkin, you see his humanity slowly fade away, even to the point where his face is pulled into his chest, contorted with pain. It's at this point I need to remind you that this is on the PS1, and this level of detail of grotesque imagery and transformation is amazing for the time, and continuing to watch this man's humanity be burned away racked me with terror for years on end, and even in his third transformation, you can see the remains of his past life crying out in agony as his body transforms into this massive monster that imprisons what was once a brilliant man. And this isn't the last time you face this mutant. You face him 2 more times. Each time he evolves further and further into this. It's thanks to William Birkin that we have these transforming monsters in the Resident Evil series. And the transformations watching him are just horrific. The way it oozes around, the way it has that one bloodshot eye, and how its body grows as it enters the train with its tentacles swinging. It's hard to believe that this was once a man of science. And that is why William Birkin is the scariest monster in video game history. At least to me. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below on what your scariest monsters are that you ever faced in video games. I'm MangaKamen, and remember to examine your fandom.
Stop looking into my soul!